Hi, everybody. Ross Porter here. I have always maintained that the best sportscasters in America have their homes here in Los Angeles. We've had some great ones, and one of those joins us today. He spent 44 years announcing the Los Angeles Kings hockey games, and he is regarded as one of the finest NHL play by play broadcasters ever. And it's a real pleasure for me to say hello to Bob Miller.
Ross, it's very nice to be with you, and thank you very much for that introduction.
I'm sure your parents were like mine, Bob, and that is that they taught you to respect your elders. With that in mind, I want you to know that I'm going to respect you today as much as I can, because I learned in the last few hours that you are 6 weeks older than me.
Yeah, we are elders, that's for sure.
Bob, you announced 3,351 Kings games between 1973 and 2017. You were on radio and TV the first 17 seasons, and then you went to television only for the last 27. Why did you leave radio?
Well, it came down to where, as you know, we did a simulcast, and then in 1990, they decided that they would rather do without the simulcast, and I went to TV. Nick Nixon, who was my partner at the time on radio, he went to radio and is still the radio play-by-play announcer today. And then former King player Jimmy Fox in 1990 came in as my partner on TV, and we worked together for 27 years.
All of us who have done play-by-play on radio and television have opinions on how we approach each. What were your thoughts about that?
Well, I think in the sport of hockey, you almost, even though you're on TV, have to do a radio style play by play because the puck changes hands so quickly and so often that I don't think that viewers can automatically see the television and see who's got the puck. So I think I always did somewhat of a radio broadcast rather than strictly TV because I felt that's what the viewer needed to be up to date on the game.
Bob, I've had people say over the years, I want to go to the hockey game and see it in person because I get more out of it and I see more than if I'm sitting at home watching television. Do you think that's true?
Yes, I don't think there's any substitute for going in person to see a hockey game. And I've told people, if you've never been before, go to 3 hockey games. And then if you're not hooked after 3 games, then maybe it's not your sport. But I'll guarantee you, you're probably going to be hooked because seeing it in person, you get the feeling of the speed and the contact and the crowd noise and everything else that even with the advancements we've had in television, you can't bring that the way it is if you're watching it live. So I think the best way to see it, and I know this is kind of going against my profession, is to see it live. And then when you watch it on TV, you'll be able to watch it and understand it and be up with the game a little bit more.
You were not the first Kings announcer. You were the third. You thought you had the job a year earlier. What happened?
Well, Chick Hearn, the great basketball announcer, was put in charge of finding a hockey announcer by the owner of the Kings at the time, Jack Kent Cooke. And I've always kiddingly said Chick was so into basketball, I don't know if he knew a hockey puck from an English muffin. But he was in charge. And a friend of mine here in California called me and said, the Kings are looking for an announcer because Jiggs McDonald, the first announcer, went with the Atlanta Flames in 1972. So I sent some material to Chick, and he called me and he said, I really like what you sent. I'm going to suggest that you get the job. So I thought, well, I've got it. And then it was summertime. I was living in Wisconsin, and the months are going by, and pretty soon it's August. And I think I haven't heard a word about this job. And I'm going to have to make some arrangements if we're going to move to Los Angeles. And then my wife and I were at a vacation up in northern Wisconsin, and I picked up the Sunday Milwaukee Journal in 1972, and there was an article on Chick Hearn's son who had passed away. And I said, I don't know what to do now. I can't call Chick and ask about the job. And then I was at a Big Ten meeting in Chicago for public relations directors, and I ran into Don Anderson. He was the SID at USC.
Yeah.
And I asked him, did the Kings ever name an announcer? He said, yes, I just saw it in the Times. They named an announcer yesterday. So I thought, well, I guess I didn't get the job. So I stayed at Wisconsin. And as it turns out, it was very fortunate. Wisconsin in 1972-73 won the NCAA championship, and I was part of that. And then I left right after they won that championship, as Chick had called me back and said, we're going to make another change, and I'm recommending you. So come on out and let's talk about your contract. So that's the way that happened.
Bob, where'd you go to high school?
Went to high school in Chicago, Calumet High School on the south side of Chicago.
You're a Hawkeye. Graduated
Yes.
from the University of Iowa. With an
Iowa
degree
Hawkeye.
in
Went out there.
communication studies.
I'm sorry, what?
Like many of us in sportscasting who went to college, you got play-by-play experience doing probably football and basketball on the campus radio station. That's what happened to me. I never had anybody ever say to me that they heard me on the campus station. Did you?
Yeah, you know, at the time it was called WSUI, and it was a 5,000-watt station,
Wow.
campus station. So it had pretty good coverage in the Iowa City area. And so there were people who would listen. In those days, and it may have been that way with Oklahoma too, Ross, where you were, we had individual radio stations would do their own play-by-play. So we'd have 13 different radio stations doing an Iowa football game on a Saturday, of which we were one of them. And whether anybody listened or not, it gave me some great, great experience at doing football and basketball. Never did hockey because Iowa didn't have a hockey team, so that came later. But I had a great experience at the University of Iowa.
I think my broadcast went into the dormitories at OU as far as they went. It just occurred to me when you said that. Didn't Ronald Reagan at one time do play-by-play of Iowa football?
Well, he did. He worked in Iowa. His first job was in Davenport, Iowa, and he worked for a station there. Then he went to WHO, the big 50,000-watt station in Des Moines, and there he did Cubs baseball on the ticker tape, and he did. He did the Drake relays and track. I don't believe he did Iowa football as such, but he and I had a really good conversation about his time in Iowa and doing the Cubs game on the ticker tape, and he was just outstanding to talk to. We had a sportscaster camp. We had about 150 young people interested in play-by-play, and he was our commencement speaker, and he just did a marvelous job.
I thought I heard somewhere that very, very early in his career, after he got out of Eureka College, somebody gave him a chance to do a couple of Iowa football games because he said to the manager when he went in to check for an interview, how am I supposed to get a job if nobody will listen to me? And of course, he went on from there.
Well, what I heard that day, that guy at WOC in Davenport said, where were we yesterday? We were listening to some sports announcers. And he said, well, I didn't know about it. He said, well, if you go in that booth and when the red light comes on, can you do a football game? And Reagan said, yes, I can. He played football in high school and college. And he said, so I went in there and I knew all the players on our team and I knew some of the players on the opponents. And he said, I did the play-by-play. And on the last play of the game, I was supposed to pull out. He was a guard, pull out and lead the interference around the end. And I missed my block. but the runner went all the way down for the winning touchdown. And on that radio recreation, I threw the greatest block in college football history.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, I heard that when he made the first deal with the manager says, I'll give you $5,000 a game, $5 a game. That's it. And he did so well that they said, okay, we'd like you back next year and we'll give you $10 a game. Now, I don't know whether that was the Iowa Hawkeyes or not. Then it was on to Wisconsin for you. Bob, had you ever seen a hockey game?
Yeah, growing up in Chicago, I followed the Blackhawks and went to some games at the Chicago Stadium. They weren't very good in those days, but I enjoyed the game. But as you know, Ross, when somebody says you're going to do the play-by-play and you haven't done it before, even though you've watched games, it's a whole different situation. And one time I was working at a radio TV station in Madison, Wisconsin, and the program director saw me in the hallway and he said, "Oh, I'm glad I ran into you. This Friday and Saturday, we're doing Wisconsin hockey and you're doing the play-by-play." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." So I met with a Wisconsin coach, Bob Johnson, who later won Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh. And he was so enthusiastic. He said, "Here's what you got to know." And so the first game I did was on the road. And I got back and I saw the coach's wife. And I said, "Martha, did you listen to the game?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What did you think?" She said, "Well, it was good. It was good. But you didn't tell me who the referees were." I said, "Is that important?" She said, "Yes. How do I know who to be mad at if I don't know who the referees are?"
Oh, that's great. As far as I'm concerned, and I've always said this, not because you're here with me today, but a hockey play-by-play announcer to me has the most difficult job of any of his counterparts in sports. Line changes, frequent player substitutions, all while the action goes on.
Mhm.
What was the secret to Bob Miller's outstanding ability to see everything and describe it so accurately?
Well, I think the secret, and I think this applies, Ross, in any endeavor you go into, any job you have. And the key word I've always told people is preparation.
That's right.
Because especially in hockey, if you're not prepared and know those players by heart, you're almost lost because of the speed of the game and how quick the puck changes hands. You don't have a spotter because it just is too fast. So you've got to do your homework. You've got to be prepared when that game starts because everything then is ad lib when that game is going on. So I'd say preparation is really the big factor. The only other announcer that I think would reach that area of preparedness and difficulty is a horse race announcer who every, say, 20 minutes has another 10 or 12 horses, and he's got to know who those horses are, the colors, and do that description. And he doesn't have a day to think about it. So a horse race announcer who does a great job, I admire them for being able to do that on 10 races in an afternoon, because that's a difficult job too.
What was the toughest part of hockey play-by-play for you?
Well, I think it was knowing the pace of the game and doing the game at your pace, at my pace, not the pace of the game. In other words, don't get too wordy. You don't have to describe every single pass in a game. You do it at a pace where the viewer or listener can realize it and understand it and get a picture, especially on radio, in his mind of what's going on in the game. And there is that fine line because of the speed of the game where you keep up with the action, but not so fast that the listener can't understand what you said. So I get a lot of tapes from youngsters and I'd have to rewind the tape recorder to say, what did he just say? Well, that's defeating the purpose. Yes, he talked fast, but if I can't understand him, that's not his aim. So I say just, pick your spots of when you're up to date with the action and play by play. And other times, let the audience breathe. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of dead air at times. Just let the listener breathe a little bit and just get a better picture of what's going on the ice. And then on radio, of course, really describe where the puck is in the corner. They're skating from our left to our right, so he gets a picture of that. If you say he's in the right wing corner, you can picture that. And those things are important. And like anything, I think the more you do, the better you get.
Did you have to memorize every player's number on both teams?
Well, not so much. I mean, I didn't memorize all the Kings, and by the time we'd play a first preseason game, I'd have them in my mind. But so I had to memorize all the visitors. And I don't know if you had this experience, Ross. I could write them down once or twice, and then without looking, write that roster down again. Right. And I think the key, again, is describing what you see. And it's amazing to me how many people can't describe what they're looking at. And that's so much a part of doing hockey play-by-play or any other play-by-play, describing what you're looking at and describing it accurately, and really putting the details in that the listener knows I can almost see the game even though I'm listening to it on radio.
Bob, I would think it would be very difficult if you had back-to-back games. Tonight, I got to memorize the Boston Bruins. Tomorrow night, I got to memorize the New York Rangers. How did you have time to do that?
Well, I never wanted to jump ahead. If we had two games, I never wanted to get working on the second game before I did the first game, because it'd be, to me, too easy to make a mistake of which players on which team. And so I never started on the second game until that first game was over. And if we were on the road, I would start on that second game, memorizing that roster on the team plane as we flew to the next city, and just write those down, and then put the pad aside and try to write them again from memory. And so it was especially difficult, Ross, when we played teams in the Eastern Conference, because we didn't see them that much, so that you might go months between games with the New York Rangers or Boston Bruins, and they may have made changes at that time in their roster. So those were pretty tough, doing those back-to-back games.
You had a handful of color men or analysts over the years. I would think it'd be tough for them to get a word in when they did. Was it only when play stopped?
No, I'll tell you what we found was you get a rapport with me, the guy doing the play-by-play, and you kind of know by the inflection of my voice when I'm going to pause and you can jump in there, and that's the way we worked it. And like my last partner, Jimmy Fox, a former player, was exceptional at describing and analyzing the play. And I've often said ex-players who played the game see things that I couldn't see. He didn't have to follow the puck. He could follow what led up to a goal, and then he could recap that play. The downfall I see in some former players becoming color announcers is some of them think, well, I played the game. I don't have to prepare anything. I'm just going to sit down and tell people what I see. And that is not right. I was there every day talking to players, doing homework on the teams, doing homework on those players, as almost as if he never played the game. He was so good at that.
Did you and your partner talk before a game about some subject that you thought might be interesting during that night's broadcast?
I would do that if it was kind of a controversial topic, but one that might have been in the public eye, in the newspapers, on TV and radio. And I might talk about, this is kind of a sensitive area. Are we going to get into that? And if we do, how do we handle it? And other than that, we would have a meeting before the game, obviously, and I'd talk with our producer the night before on telephone about what we're going to do in our open, what are we going to do between periods, who are we going to interview, and then we'd go over all that again in person a couple hours before the game. For a 7:30 game, I'd get down to the arena at about 3:15 in the afternoon, just to catch up on everything that happened last night, what might happen during our telecast today, and then we'd have a whole production meeting, as most people do, and go over that situation again. So when we started at 7:30, all of us hopefully were on the same page, and usually we were. And I know a lot of people said, "What time do you get to the game? 7:15?" I said, "No, not 7:15. We're there doing a lot of preparation before you're on the air."
So you come to Los Angeles. Jack Kent Cooke purchased the expansion Los Angeles Kings in 1967 for $2 million, and the Los Angeles Lakers for $5 million. Boy, that seems cheap now, doesn't it, Bob?
Oh, now they're paying, I think the Seattle Kraken, the new team in the National Hockey League, I think they paid $750 million just to get into the NHL. So with Cook spending $2 million, which I'm sure he hated to part with at that time, but it sounds like a real bargain now.
Bob, you worked for Jack for 6 years, knowing him as we both do. My guess is that was an adventure for you.
It certainly was. About 1 month into my first year there, I was driving to the game and I thought, I can't do a game this fast if the owner is constantly upset with certain words or descriptions that you do. I'm just going to do the game tonight the way I feel I can do it. And if that's not good enough for him, fine, get somebody else, because he was a hands-on owner.
Oh, yeah.
I have no problem with that. It was his money, his team, but there's a time to do it. It's not during the play-by-play. He would call during the play-by-play on the phone and say, "You're not doing what I told you to do." And to me, call me in tomorrow morning and let's talk about what's going on. So one time on a radio broadcast, I said something that I thought was kind of comical. And the next day he did call me in and he said, "Dear boy," he always, "Dear boy, do you know who my next door neighbor is?" I said, "No, Mr. Cook, I have no idea." He lived in Bel Air, and he said, "Well, it's Jerry Lewis. He has 14 writers. You don't have any. Don't try to be funny." And that always entered my mind if I thought, "Hey, here's something that I think is funny." I'd say, "No, I'm not going to say it because he won't like it." So,
were there any other zany stories about Jack Kent Cooke that you recall?
Well, we were on the road in Montreal one night, and Rich Marotta was my partner, and so we didn't have a studio in the Montreal Forum, so he had to go down on the ice between periods to interview a player. At the end of the first period, the score was 1-0, and I was on camera, and Rich's mic didn't work, so they're telling me, "Keep talking, keep talking, keep talking," and this went on for about 5 minutes. It's 1-0. But things kept popping into my head to talk about. And then they said, "Okay, throw it down to Rich." So I said, "Let's go down to Rich Marotta." The phone rang in our booth in Montreal. And the engineer said to me, "It's for you." I said, "Who's calling me?" He said, "Somebody in LA." So I got on, and it was somebody there who said, "Mr. Cook just called." And I thought, oh, he's going to congratulate me on filling all that time. I said, "What did he want?" He said for you to quit hogging the mic and let Rich talk once in a while. So I thought you can't satisfy him, But unfortunately, a lot of good people who worked for him at the Forum in those days, who were very good at their job, just said, "I can't put up with this anymore," and they'd leave. So, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to stick around, and as you mentioned earlier, 44 years. I remember as a kid listening to the White Sox, and the announcer was Bob Elson.
Oh, yeah.
And Bob Elson, one night, I heard them say, "This is Bob Elson's 40th year with the White Sox. And I remember thinking, 40 years with one team. I can't believe that anybody would be with a team that long. And then all of a sudden, here I was, 44 years with the Kings.
And Vin Scully went 67 years with the Dodgers.
That's
67
right.
years. Is that that's
And,
mind-boggling, isn't it?
and the Kings called me and said, would you like to give a Kings jersey to Vin Scully commemorating his 67 years? And I said, yes. So I took that out to the Dodger Stadium, and they had videotape, and they were taping it, and they had a number 67 on the jersey. So as I presented it on camera to Vin, I said, Vin, this number, a high number like this, probably means you're a prospect. I don't know if you'll make the team. But he said, well, I'm trying. I really am. I'm doing all my homework. So it was a great moment for me to be able to do that with Vin.
Of course, behind you, the color photo of Hall of Famers Vin Scully, Chick Hearn, and Bob Miller. So
yeah, Vin's got that too, and he said, I've got that up in my office, and I said, so do I, and it's a great honor for me to be with those guys. I'll tell you a little story about that. We did a half-hour TV show, and Vin was on the left side, Chick was in the middle, and I was on the right side, and Bill McDonald was doing the interview. And there was a little lull in the conversation, and I said to Bill, Bill, look at the rings on these guys' fingers. So Vin said, this is the World Series ring, 1988. Chick said, this is the NBA championship ring, 1987. The camera came to me, and we hadn't won anything at that point. And I said, this is my wedding ring, 1963.
That's great. Well, 1988, there it is. It took them,
yeah, there it is. Congratulations.
Took them 32 years after this to win again as they did last year. But, going back to Jack Kent Cooke, Bob, he was disappointed that the Kings didn't draw better crowds. He was told there were over 300,000 Canadians living within a 3-hour drive of Los Angeles. And Cooke said, now I know why they left Canada. They hate hockey.
Right. Oh, but it's certainly different these days now. And that all started with the arrival of Wayne Gretzky in a King uniform. And now 18,230 almost every night at Staples Center. And even in the early years in the 70s, we had some good teams that went to the playoffs and just never made that next step into either the next round or to get into the final. And but we had great teams and exciting games with the Triple Crown line with Dion, Taylor, and Simmer, and the Kings fans have really been loyal to that Kings team and very, very passionate fans.
Another note on Jack Kent Cooke. Bob, how he tried to favor and gain favor with the media in Los Angeles. I was on Channel 4 at that time doing the 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock sportscast. And he would periodically invite my wife and me out to the Forum for dinner and give us tickets for the game that night. In the 1969-1970 season, the Kings finished the year with 14 wins and 52 losses.
Glad I wasn't there.
It might have been that year we were asked to join him at one point during the season. And at dinner that night, he looked at me and said, Ross, what do we have to do to get people to come to our hockey games? I looked at him. I said, one word, win.
Win. That's right. That's exactly right. We'd have some meetings and say, what are we going to do to do exactly what you said? How do we get this building filled? And they'd say, well, Detroit does this and Boston does this. And I said, well, I'll tell you one other thing they do. They win. And if you're not going to win, there's plenty of things to do in this town without coming out to see teams lose. So along with that, I think the way the NHL started with the expansion draft, and Las Vegas got some very good players, and they won, and they filled that building from opening night on, and they're a threat in the playoffs. So I hope the Seattle Kraken can do the same thing. It's just people don't want to go see a team lose 70 games a year. So give that expansion team some good players and make them competitive, and you'll fill the building.
You must have seen a real change in attitude of Kings fans from year 1 to year 44 of your tenure, didn't you?
Oh yeah, and I think most of that goes back, as I mentioned, to the arrival of Wayne Gretzky. And there were a lot of Kings fans who didn't like Wayne Gretzky when he played for the Edmonton Oilers. So they had buttons on their pinned to their shirts. I was a Kings fan, BG, before Gretzky, and they took pride in that. And a funny story that somebody told me, I haven't confirmed it. I don't know if it's true, but it's a good story. One of the Oiler players, when Gretzky played with the Oilers, got knocked down and he was really woozy. And another player came over to Glenn Sather, the Oilers coach, and said, "Coach, he's really out of it. He doesn't know who he is." And Sather said, "Good. Go tell him he's Wayne Gretzky."
Oh, that's great. Friends, let me tell you about the honors that Bob Miller has achieved in his tremendous career. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2000, the Los Angeles Kings Hall of Fame, the Wisconsin Hockey Hall of Fame, and the Southern California Sports Broadcasters Hall of Fame. The press box at Staples Center, the Kings home arena, is named in his honor. He had a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, placed in 2006. And that day he said, "My greatest fear is that I retire and the Kings won a Stanley Cup the next year." Well, 6 years later, they won their first, and then 2 years later, another one. Bob has a statue of him erected outside of Staples Center, and he's also the first non-player to have a banner hanging from the rafters at Staples. Some career, Bob. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Ross. It's something, all of those honors, something that I never started out thinking, okay, this is my goal. I want to have a banner inside the arena. I want to have a statue. I want to have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Those things were so far removed from my thoughts. And I think it's the same even for players. I don't think players start a career saying my goal is to make it into the Hall of Fame in whatever sport they're in. They just want to get a job, stay in the league, be successful, and see what happens. So to look back at 44 years, the Kings were so accommodating to me and did so many things for me that I guess that's why I decided I wasn't going to go to any other team. And the longevity is something that I treasure and still hold dear to my heart. But those are things that are permanent, rather than other than you get a trophy and those are nice, but these are permanent things that you mentioned, the Star in the Walk of Fame and the Hall of Fame in Toronto with a plaque in the Hockey Hall of Fame and other things that are going to be there forever. And that really means a lot to me.
Folks, I've got a real treat for you. I've asked Bob to recreate for us the closing seconds of the sixth game of the 2012 Stanley Cup Finals. The Kings were ahead of the New Jersey Devils 3-2, trying to win their first championship. So here we go. The Kings have the lead, only seconds to go for the finish. Let's bring in the voice of the Kings and Hockey Hall of Famer, Bob Miller.
Thank you very much, Ross. This is for you, Kings fans, wherever you may be. All the frustration and disappointment of the past is gone. The 45-year drought is over. The Los Angeles Kings are indeed the kings of the National Hockey League. They are the 2012 Stanley Cup champions. And I'll tell you what happened there, Ross. I write those things down. I don't trust myself to memorize them and stumble around at an important moment like that. So I was trying to time it so that the buzzer to end the game would hit right when I said they are the Stanley Cup champions. So it got down to 3 seconds and the horn blows and stops the game. And I thought, what do I do now? So I finished that. Then they restarted the game, and then there was a countdown, and I said, the countdown is on. 3, 2, 1, it's over. So I recovered out of that, but you can plan things. And I thought 10 seconds, I got plenty of time. I'm going to hit it right on cue, and the whistle blows, and I couldn't believe it. But that was so exciting. And what really, as I look back, pleased me the most was that with a 6-1 lead and time running out, even with 4 or 5 minutes to go, the fans are chanting, "We've got the cup, we've got the cup." And my partner, Jimmy Fox, who is so superstitious, he's going, "No, no, don't say that, don't say that." And they just had all that time to cheer and know we're not on the edge of their seat because we may lose the game in overtime. So they had time to cheer and just get that long drought off their shoulders and able to see the first Stanley Cup. So I was excited for them. They were just going crazy in the stands, excited for the players, excited for everyone in the organization, because there were a lot of people who thought they would never see the day of the Stanley Cup being paraded around on the ice at Staples Center. So what happened was my wife and I, we went to a couple Stanley Cup parties, and they're usually all the same. But all you don't need any entertainment, just the Stanley Cup. People are there. They can't get over having their picture taken with the Stanley Cup.
There you are, right there in the picture.
Yeah, that was great.
Was it pretty light?
It's about 34 and a half pounds. The only thing is it's not heavy, but it's not balanced real well. So it's a little bottom heavy there. You got to be careful. And there's Dustin Brown on the right, the Kings captain, who brought it up and said, "Here, finally, I see you." And there's the cup, and Nick Nixon on the left. It was just a marvelous, marvelous day that most of us thought we would never see happen. So my wife and I are driving home from a Stanley Cup party, and I said to her, are we going to go to every one of these Stanley Cup parties? She said, "Of course we are. We might never see this again." And as you mentioned, 2 years later, we see it again. Two Stanley Cups in 3 years, and each one was equally exciting.
And in 2014, you beat the New York Rangers 4-1 and kept it going.
Yeah, and there were several overtimes, double overtimes. That was a tremendous series. And they talk about being nervous and on the edge of your seat, because I did not want to fly back to New York the next day for a Game 7, because you never know what's going to happen. But they won it, and as I say, a great parade downtown, 300,000 people or so, and I saw some police later. They said, every time we asked a fan to move back onto the curb, everybody complied with what we asked them. We had no problems whatsoever. They said we had only 3 arrests for drunkenness in the crowd. And I told my wife, "I told you wouldn't get away with it." But I was kidding. But it was nice to know that those fans were respectful of that victory, and there was absolutely no damage, no problems, and everybody enjoyed that. And then the team had a second parade in the South Bay, where a lot of them lived, and they really loved that parade, because in the parade route, they're seeing people they deal with every day in restaurants, the dry cleaner. So they're seeing neighbors and friends of theirs, and that was a great parade also.
Bob, you had to wait 39 years for all this to happen. Were there ever times when you thought to yourself, I don't think they're going to ever win one?
Yes, several years. And there were some times when we'd start the season and the announcers would get together and talk and say, "You know what? We don't have a chance." We wouldn't say that on the air, but we knew we're not competitive in this league with the team we have now. And those years would go by, and so I really stayed with it because I wanted to experience that moment, and it was just pure joy that I'll never forget when they finally did win that Stanley Cup.
Well, I feel like we had an exclusive today. Bob Miller has come out of retirement right here this afternoon.
This would be the only time.
Bob, did you retire for health reasons?
Well, that was a catalyst because I had quadruple bypass surgery, and I really thought, and I think I was 78 at that time. It was about 5 years ago. And I thought, this is kind of an indication that maybe you better step back, take it easy. And but I still would go to the games, and I recovering from that bypass surgery, I'd sit and watch the games and tell my wife, I think I could do it. I could do those games. And at the end of the first period, I'd get up to go out and get a drink of water, be exhausted when I got back to sit down. And I thought, there's no way. There's no way I could do it. The doctor said, well, do it, but take it easy. I said, once the game starts, you can't take it easy or you're not doing your job, and it's not fair to the fans or the listeners or viewers. You got to get into it and really get into the excitement of the moment. And so I thought it's better just to say, I think that's it. It's been a great run, 44 years, all the things that have happened. What more could I ask? And so I still miss doing the games. I don't miss doing all the preparation, which I think is harder now because of the salary cap. They bring a player up for one day, send them back down the next day, and maybe don't even play him that night, but you still have to do all your homework on that player just in case he gets in. So I think it's difficult now.
Well, you remain an ambassador with the Kings organization on a part-time basis. You still MC the Kings Legends Night, which you've done. When COVID was not a problem, how often would you and Judy go to a Kings game?
After I retired, we would go to about 18 games a year, all at home. And she is a great hockey fan. She loves going to the games, and she grew up in Wisconsin, didn't know anything about hockey when we got together. And so she's an avid fan now. And I think that's what you need as an announcer when you're gone and on the road so many nights of the year. You need a partner who is really into that sport and involved in it. And that helps you in your job of doing the games. And that's what I had in Judy, being a great fan. And I think it's great for your kids, too, when they're young. They wonder, well, where did Dad go? And, well, now they can see, okay, there he is on television. He's in Boston or he's in Philadelphia or whatever. But they don't wonder where the salesman goes on a Monday morning and they don't see him again till Friday. Where is he? What is he doing? And Nick Nixon had a great comment. His son, Nick, who's married now and has kids of his own, his son Nick was about 2 years old or something, and we were on TV together, two of us, and they'd zoomed into a single shot of me, and Nick's little boy went and looked behind the TV like, where did my dad go?
Oh, that's wonderful. But you're absolutely right. I felt the same way with my wonderful wife, Lynn, as you did with Judy. She took care of everything, took care of our two sets of twins. And it was just marvelous the way that she just kept it all together. Bob, one time I figured it out pretty close to this. I was with the Dodgers 28 years. Do you know that I did not see her for 9 of the 28 years, counting spring training in Florida, road games, things like that? You really got to have a terrific wife to be able to do that.
That's right. No doubt about that. We tell people we've been married 58 years, and Judy always says, but it really isn't 58. He was gone half of the time. So,
yeah. Well, Lynn and I reached 60 years in June.
Well, congratulations. That's great.
Milestone. You also wrote two books on the Kings in 2006 and 2013. How much time did you put in?
Well, I hesitated. People said, because I had a lot of stories and still do. And they said, you got to write those stories down, write a book. And I was still working at the time. And I was hesitant to do it then because I thought, when you write a book, I think your relationship with the players and people in the organization changes a little bit because they think, be careful what you say. Don't talk to him. It's going to wind up in a book. So when we didn't have a season in 04, 05, and there was some doubt, are they ever going to come back? I said, I'm going to write this book now. So the advantage I had, Ross, was it's not a tell-all book. It's just a book of some anecdotes of what went on during the Kings season. And I had a lot of those in my head, and I didn't have to do a lot of research. I did some on dates and scores of games because I wanted people to say, is he making this up or not? But they could go look at that date and say, okay, they were in that city, and that was the score of the game. We had a goaltender, Gary Cobra Simmons, who didn't play for the first 35 games. Rogie Vachon was the starter. And they put Cobra in one night, and he got a 3-3 tie in Buffalo. And they said to him, do you think you'll play tomorrow night in Montreal? And he said, what do you think I am, a machine? And he said, so I called him and I said, do I have this right? It was 3-3 in Buffalo. And he said, yes, I was so bad, I couldn't stop the puck coming out of the net.
Oh, that's
So
great.
that's some of the research I did, and dates and times and teams and scores and that kind of stuff. But otherwise, it was just fun to write all of those stories. And, there's no plot. You could put the book down and 6 months later pick it up and pick it right up there and read some of the stories. And then the second book came when the Kings won the Stanley Cup. And I thought, well, now I've got to do another book on winning the Stanley Cup after all those years and talk about the parade and the season and the playoffs and all that. So that was the second book.
How long do you think it took you in all of the two books?
Well, the first one probably took me a little longer. They reprinted some of the stories in the second book, so I didn't have to go back and do those again. But the first book, I didn't look at it and did it in the off season, obviously. And I think it probably took me dealing with the publisher and what do you want to do and editing the book, probably a month and a half, something like that.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah. And luckily I didn't have to do too much research because I had enough of a memory recall in those days that I had those stories in my head. And all I had to do, and I thought, I'm not a writer, I can't write this. And I thought, well, I'm going to go up and try it. And just wrote a story, brought it down to my wife. What do you think? She said, this is exactly the way you've told that story for years. It reads perfectly. So I wrote 112 stories for that book. They didn't all get in there, but it was satisfying to me just to have that in print for our kids, our grandkids to take a look at that and read about what happened during my career with the Kings.
Bob Miller is our guest. I want to take a little time now with you in what I call a rapid fire question and answer segment. So are you prepared for this?
I'm all set.
All right. Who is the best hockey player you've ever seen?
That's a good argument between a lot of people who say Gordie Howe was the greatest they've ever seen, and others who say Wayne Gretzky. It's tough to compare eras in hockey because when Gordie Howe played, it wasn't as wide open. He scored 801 goals, and Gretzky scored 894 goals. And one thing is, it took Gordie Howe 26 years become the leading scorer in the NHL. and Gretzky passed him in 12 and a half seasons. So a lot different game, but those two, Gretzky is the greatest I've ever seen and had a chance to describe on TV.
Marcel Dion was a king star earlier than that. Bob, the difference in Dion and Gretzky when it came to style of play.
Well, size figured into it. Marcel was smaller and stockier, great balance on skates, and a great goal scorer. He scored 731 goals in his Hall of Fame career, and he was a pure goal scorer. Wayne Gretzky, his strength was not only in scoring goals and points, but in seeing the game as it developed and knowing where to be at the right time. Growing up, his dad told him, don't chase the puck. You'll never catch up with it. Go where you think the puck will wind up. And he had the ability to do that and anticipate what was going on. And he ended with 2,857 points, Gretzky. And one thing that I don't know a lot of people know about, he's the all-time leading goal scorer in the history of the game with 894. And yet, if he never scored one goal in his career, he'd still be the all-time leading scorer in the history of the game because he also had 1,963 assists. So just a great career.
Which NHL team is the best you ever saw?
Well, the best teams I ever saw were the Montreal Canadiens in the early part of their dynasty in Montreal. They've won 24 Stanley Cups. You know, it's unbelievable. So they were an outstanding team. And in those days, in the draft, for whatever reason, the other owners agreed, okay, Montreal gets the pick of the best two players in the province of Quebec. Well, that was pretty good first two picks before any other teams could pick. I don't know why they agreed to that, but they were a tremendous team. And, the best team now, I hate to go against the Stanley Cup winner because they're defending champions, Tampa Bay Lightning, an expansion team in Florida, and they won a couple of Stanley Cups, and they're an outstanding team.
Any coaches come to mind?
Well, I go back again to a man who's retired. He's the winningest all-time coach in the history of the National Hockey League, and that's Scottie Bowman, when he coached not only in Montreal, but in St. Louis and Buffalo. And he's also the losingest coach in the history. That tells you how long he's been around. And he was great. Barry Trotz, now the coach of the New York Islanders, outstanding coach. Coach Bednar in Colorado. Those are teams that really could challenge for the Stanley Cup.
What do you say, Bob, to people who say, oh, hockey is too brutal?
Well, they've cut down a lot in what used to turn people away. All they do is fight. They've cut the fighting down a lot. And some games, there are no fights. I say the difference is if you took someone who says that about hockey, let them stand on the sideline of an NFL football game on a Sunday and see up close what goes on every snap of the ball in the middle of that line and everywhere else, and then look at injuries each week and see a list in the newspapers, a column, one or two columns wide of injuries. I don't know that I agree with that because people just say, why do they let them fight? Well, in my opinion, hockey is a sport where in football, I line up against you, and when they blow the whistle and snap the ball, we're going to hit each other, and then we're going to stop when the whistle blows. In hockey, it's more random, and you might get a cheap shot from somebody, and now you're mad at him. And so the emotions play into it in hockey. But it's tamed down a lot, and I think that's a good thing. But if you take the hitting out, as somebody said, you got ice capades. You don't have hockey.
Are there any changes that you would like to see the National Hockey League make?
From a broadcaster standpoint, I think they try too much to cut down the time length of the game. And so after every goal, they're hurried back to center ice to have another faceoff. From the television and radio standpoint, I'd like to see them just take a little bit more time. Let us really enjoy that goal, which is so important. It may be the only one of the game, or it may be the game-winning goal, and let the audience see the reaction of fans and players without having to dump right back to drop the puck again and have another face-off. Just let your broadcast or telecast breathe a little bit and let the crowd noise come in and let you feel like you're right there in the arena.
Bob, I wanted to kind of look at the history of the Los Angeles Kings, and you've had such an important part of that. 54 seasons for the Kings, 30 playoff appearances. Their overall record, 1,754 wins, 1,828 losses. Individually, all-time goals leader, Luc Robitaille, 557. All-time points leader, Marcel Dion, 1,307, as you said. Most goals in a season, Bernie Nichols, 70, the same year. Most points in a season recorded by Wayne Gretzky at 168. Do you know the Kings have had 72 different goaltenders? And
don't ask me to name them.
There's only been one who's been there 9 years or more. And I'll bet you can tell me who that was right off the bat, couldn't you?
9 years or more with the Kings in goal. Well, I would say Vachon, but I'm not real good on trivia.
All right. No, it's
Quick.
It's Jonathan Quick.
Yeah, Quick. Okay.
Jonathan's been in goal 14 years, played 666 games. Let's see, who's next? Rogi's next, 389. And then Kelly Rudy at 360. So that's just kind of a look at the Kings, and it's been a real interesting history. Good teams, bad teams, two Stanley Cup champions.
Well, it's quite a history, as you say, and I still think a lot of people don't think of the Kings as a very good team. They've been in a rebuilding heading into this year now, and but they had some great playoff games in the 70s and the 80s, and in 2012 and 14, and winning those 2 and 3 years, and going back and forth year to year with Chicago winning, then the Kings win, then Chicago wins, then the Kings win, and it's just been really satisfying to me to see the fans hang in there and still back the Kings and be avid fans. And I look back and I'm so thankful that I've had a chance to be with the team that long and still get a chance to meet with the fans as an ambassador and talk with them. I really enjoy that. And it's all in all more than I could ask for as far as a career.
Bob, I want you to know how much this means to me that you took the time to be with us today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And of course, I wish you and Judy the best of health. And we will talk to you and see you along the line. But thank you, my good friend, for taking the time today.
Well, thank you, Ross. It's my pleasure. And I congratulate you and Lynn on 60 years. I hope Judy and I make it 2 more to get to that. And I have enjoyed being with you and reminiscing and talking about some of these great moments in Kings history.